First of all, we need to make a new folder on our desktop, and I advise you to make it on your desktop so that you can access this folder at any time throughout this course. I made a folder here and I'm going to call it JavaScript Basics. And what we're going to do here is we're going to open up a file. And we're going to open up a text document, and we can call this document whatever we like. Alright, so we have a name for my text document here, and we're going to again open it up so we can edit it, just so you guys can see. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add a few little syntax things for HTML just so that everything works here. And you guys don't have to worry about this too much. I'm just going to add this in really quick. Alright, so we have the overall syntax of our HTML document made. And again, don't worry about this too much. I'm going to cover this in more detail later on in the course. I just want to get you guys set up and running. But basically what we have here is we have HTML tags. And basically what these two tags mean is anything within these two tags are going to be our HTML. And then in our HTML tags, we have our script tags. Anything in the script tags is going to be JavaScript. Again, don't worry about this if this is confusing. We'll be covering things like syntax later on. But just keep in mind that all of our JavaScript is going to be in these two script tags right here. So in these two tags, we're going to write our first command. And this command is going to be our alert command. Now, what this command does is it sends a notification box to the user to alert them of whatever message we write. So if we click in our brackets here, and add a message, this message will pop up on the screen in a notification box for the user. So we have our commands entered here, and what we need to do now is, after this part is entered here, we need to make sure that there is a semicolon at the end of our command. All commands and statements in JavaScript need to have semicolons after them since they run in order. So if we were to ever to make a statement and not have a semicolon, we're going to get an error, and the next statement will not be able to run until this one is completed. So you always want to make sure it's a semicolon after whatever statement we enter here. You can kind of think of it like a sentence in English. You always want to have a period at the end of your sentence, but in JavaScript you want to have a semicolon. So now, in order to get this actual program to work, we're going to need to save it. So we're going to go up to File here. We're going to hit Save As. And we're going to save it as whatever name you like. But at the end, you're going to want to make sure you write .html. What this is going to do is going to tell our computer to open up this file as an HTML file. So again, if we go back to our folder here, you're going to see that there's now a new document here, and this is going to be a web browser document. So if you guys have Firefox, Google Chrome, or whatever it is you're using, it's now going to be openable in your web browser. So let's double click this and open it up here, and we can see here that our message is now displaying that we wrote earlier in a notification box. And if we hit OK, the program is now done. So this is how we're going to open up our programs, and as we get more familiar with programming in JavaScript, we're going to be using an actual code editor, and that's what we're going to cover later on. But for now, we're just going to be using Notepad for this lesson. So let's open up our document back up. And in this document, we're going to write another command. And this command is going to be slightly different. So let's go over this really quickly. This is called the document.write command. And what this command does is it'll write text onto the page that the user is viewing. So again, in these brackets here, we can enter in some quotations. And we want to make sure there's a semicolon after the end of this command. Don't worry about what the dot means right now. We're going to be covering this later. And if we save this again, and then open it up again, we can see that our first statement that we entered, the notification box, pops up, and then if we hit OK, the next statement enters in and it outputs whatever we wrote in the document.write here onto the page. So I wanted to do this to demonstrate you guys that statements basically run one after another. You'll see that it ran the first one first, and then it ran the second one right after the first one completed. And the first one completed after we clicked that OK box. So it's important to understand that JavaScript runs statements from top to bottom. It starts at the top and reads all the way to the bottom, and we'll go through the statements as we enter them in our program. So this looks a little bit confusing and looks a little bit sloppy, and that's because we're using Notepad. As you get through this course, we're going to learn how to use different code editors. But to close this lesson up, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys an actual code editor that I use, and the one I installed is called Notepad++. So if I look at our browser document that we made, that we saved it as, if we right click it, we can hit edit with this. And if you install your coding notepad, whatever text editor you're using, usually there'll be an option to open it directly. And if we click edit with Notepad++, which is the one I'm using, we can see here that everything looks a little bit different than what it looks in Notepad. It looks a little bit more better. The code is easier to read. We have color coded. You can see that everything's a little bit more organized. And what we can do, which is pretty cool here, I'm going to close this here, is we can save this directly in here. Just hit save. We gotta make a change first, so let's change this to alright, so let's give this a save. And if we close this, open up our browser again, we can see that it's instantly applied. So it saves us a lot of time between saving and whatnot. We can enter the file, edit the file directly. So what you're going to want to do is you want to get a text editor. I'm going to give you guys a link to Notepad++ that I use, but you can really use any coding text editor you want. You can spend a little bit of time looking at some options. There's a lot of free ones out there. There's even some paid ones which are pretty good, but just grab anything you want for now. I recommend if you want to follow along with me throughout this course, you can use Notepad++, but it doesn't really matter what you have. But that's pretty much brings it to close.